In webinars or virtual training, this is what you call the ghost participants. The ghost participant. I remember the movie with Bill Murray about, called the Ghostbusters. Anyway, I define ghost participants as those people who attend for whatever reason, seem not to participate, seem not to be involved, but they're there. They're attending, sometimes they're late, sometimes they're off, and etc. and the like. So I've always taken that as a factor because it's a reflection of how well you design a program on how well the learners are using. So the very first thing I'd like to do is I catch them early. In the introduction part of the program, we ask them to do something, to introduce themselves. I know who are present and who are ghosts because the ghosts will not introduce themselves. So I begin to have a detection level in there. And then we have series of activities so that you can see if they're submitting those particular activities and exercises or not. And in the chat room, in the breakout room, so you begin to observe them. So what I typically do is to make sure that I'm aware of who they are because that might be 10%, 5%, 30%, sometimes more, depends on that particular area. So the most important component in here is that we need to do something proactive. So number one, we assign very specific projects to everybody. And then I go back to some of these ghost participants and ask them, could you share and tell us about your project in the live session? I ask them ahead of time. So in the live webinar, we ask them to share these ideas. And then number two, I asked them to do a special project. I said, can you explain that project you did so that I can use that as part of my instruction because I thought the idea was very, very helpful, right? So come up with something very, very specific. Now, one consultant approached me one time and said, I really feel bad about ghost participants. I told them, don't be guilty about ghost participants because there's so many reasons why people want to come to a webinar. Many of them are just observing and that's how they will learn. Or some people are just picking up one or two ideas and that's how they want to learn. You ought to be thankful that they're actually attending your webinar, even they're ghosts. But be aware of them because sometimes being a ghost completely just becomes dead. You don't want to do that. Dead meaning to say they just went out of the workshop or the webinar because it's completely useless for them. So be aware of it, be present, and do something about your ghost participants. But most of all, don't feel guilty if they disappear. They're ghosts.